Picture this: ancient China, the Warring States period. A brutal, endless chess match played with millions of human lives. In this world, your destiny was hard-coded at birth by a social algorithm called Bloodline. Are you an aristocrat? Great, you are a god. Are you a peasant? Sorry, you are just grass. At the very bottom were the merchants, the system's necessary trash. No matter how much gold they piled up, to the rulers, they were just fat, juicy sheep waiting to be sheared. But around 260 BC, in the city of Hendong, one man looked at this impenetrable wall of class and did not see a barrier. He saw a systemic vulnerability, a massive glitch in the matrix. His name was Lü Buwei. Do not think of him as a politician. Lü was a top-tier international commodities trader, a master of arbitrage, buying low and selling high across national borders. To everyone else, power and wealth were parallel universes. But in Lü's logic, everything had a price tag. If a deal failed, it was not because the item was sacred. It just meant your offer was insulting, or your vision could not see the true asset value through the fog of the future. Wandering the streets, Lü encountered the equivalent of a winning lottery ticket floating in the gutter. A young man named Yuren. Technically, he was a prince of the mighty Qin kingdom. In reality, he was a political hostage, abandoned by his father and despised by his enemies. He was a distressed sale asset on the verge of a total market collapse. But Lü looked into those eyes full of terror and resentment, and saw a golden opportunity. This was the first hostile takeover of divine power in history. Lü was not being a hero. He was a gambler going all in. He was not buying gold. He was buying the rights to rewrite the operating system of the entire continent. The ancient venture capitalists had entered the market using cold, hard cash as a lever to pry the divine throne right off its foundation. In a dark Handan safe house, Lü Buwei sat opposite the trembling Yuren. If Yuren expected a rescue, he was wrong. Lü was performing a ruthless market analysis. He explained the structure. Qing's succession is a precision-engineered gearbox, but the gears have cracks. The current king is old. The crown prince's favorite wife, Lady Huayang, has a fatal system flaw. She has no sons. In that ecosystem, no son means total liquidation. The moment the crown prince takes the throne, Lady Huayang's power will go to zero. She is terrified of the future. This was the arbitrage opportunity Lü had sniffed out. Yuren was a toxic asset, 20th in the succession line and likely to die in 10 minutes. But Lü saw a perfect financial instrument. He did not need Yuren to be a genius. He just needed the royal code in his blood. Lü launched a multinational hedge. First, he gave Yuren 500 gold as seed funding to rebrand himself as a hero. Then, Lü took another 500 gold in treasures and headed straight to the heart of the empire, Xianyang. Lü did not talk to bureaucrats. He went to the top. He met Lady Huayang's sister and sold her a long-term insurance policy. He convinced the lady that by adopting this forgotten prince, she was not helping Yuren. She was executing a stock swap to ensure the future emperor would be her controlling asset forever. It was a masterpiece of information asymmetry. In Haidang, Yuren was promised an empire. In Shenyang, Lady Huayang was promised a retirement account. Lü Buwei was the market maker. While the aristocrats squabbled over lineage, The merchant had engineered a silent takeover, but he was not done. He needed one more security layer, a backdoor that could never be uninstalled. After winning over the capital, Lü Buwei did not stop to celebrate. He knew that in the casino of politics, a verbal alliance is just paper wealth. To truly control the machine, he needed to penetrate its core logic. He returned to Handan and launched a frantic end round of funding. He liquidated every asset he owned. His warehouses, his goods, his homes. He cut off his own retreat, pouring every cent of liquidity into a political crowdfunding project that still looked like a hallucination to outsiders. He bribed guards, fed every potential informant, and paved a secret escape route across the border with gold. This was not a business trip. It was a man betting his life on the future of a civilization. To the aristocrats, this was insane. Power was a gift from the heavens. Yet Lü was trying to buy destiny with the most secular tool available, cash. He built an invisible vault in Handan, and that cash flow became Yuren's only lifeline. Under Lü's management, Yuren transformed from a terrified hostage into a charismatic leader. His reputation fed back to the Qing court through Lü's private intelligence network. This was the corporatization of a prince. Lü was the chairman and sole investor. Yuren was the CEO. Lü provided the capital, the strategy, and the crisis management. Every time the executioner's blade got too close, Lü's wallet pushed it back. This high-pressure survival game turned their partnership into a predatory symbiosis. As Yuren's valuation soared 1,000 times over, Lü realized he needed a permanent backdoor program in this new political entity. At a private banquet, he pushed his most trusted asset, the brilliant and ambitious Zhao Ji, into the center of the storm. In Lü's algorithm, contracts are easily broken, especially when faced with absolute violence. To ensure his political venture had a permanent insurance policy, he embedded a human matrix into Yuren's life. Zhao Ji. She was not just a beautiful dancer. She was Lü's shadow, trained to understand human weakness and Lü's cold logic of survival. Wan Lu gifted her Chu Yuren. The world saw a scandal, but the system saw a root-level penetration. Zhao Ji carried Lü's will, and potentially his blood, into the royal genetic sequence. This was a 20-year-long position. If the future king of Qin carried the blood of a merchant, the investment would not just be about shares, it would be a total takeover of the royal bloodline itself. This bloodline algorithm targeted the system's weakest point, legitimacy. Once the backdoor program was activated, no matter how powerful the Qing army became, their commander would essentially be an extension of Lü's will. This capitalistic penetration of power no longer stopped at gold or lobbying. It acted directly on flesh and heritage. In the deep nights of Handang, Lü looked at the growing belly of Zhao Ji and did not see the birth of a baby. He saw a political black hole that would rule for 1,000 generations. The child born in the middle of a war zone carried the most complex identity crisis in human history. Was he a prince of Qin or the son of a merchant? This secret was Lü's ultimate trump card and his darkest nightmare. With one woman and one child, Lü achieved a saturated occupation of the empire's future. He was not just Yuren's savior. He was the biological or political godfather of the supreme ruler. As the old king passed away, and a power vacuum opened in Xianyang, this sleeper cell was ready to wake up. Lü had created a hybrid, of merchant ambition and royal authority, ready to rewrite the world. In 251 BC, the massive war machine of the Qin Empire finally rebooted. The old king was dead, and Lü Buwei's political startup reached its IPO moment. Yue officially rebranded as King Zhongxiang. This was the biggest order delivery of Lu's career. He did not just deliver a king to the capital. He took the seat of the chief operating officer, commanding a 1,000,000-man army. This IPO was not just a change of leadership. It was a total takeover of aristocratic politics by merchant logic. The moment the king took the throne, Lu was appointed prime minister and granted 100,000 households as his private estate. In the history books, this is a tale of loyalty. On the balance sheet, this was Lu cashing in on a 20-year return on investment. He used 500 gold from a Handan Gata to leverage the land, people, and gold of the entire Central Plain. This investment return was unprecedented in the history of human commerce. Lu was now the CEO of the state and the king's primary creditor. The king listened to him, not just out of gratitude, but because in the king's reformatted mind, Lu was the only source of truth. This control gave Lu a power that transcended blood. He began to apply merchant efficiency to a machine that previously only knew slaughter. He wanted to prove that when violence is guided by a precision algorithm, a nation becomes invisible. However, beneath the prosperity, the system's immune response was kicking in. The old-school generals watched this 30 merchant in the prime minister's chair with icy suspicion. To them, power was earned in blood, not weighed on a scale. Lu knew the risk, so he had to use a new ideology to prove the superiority of merchant rule in the shortest time possible. King Zhongxiang ruled for only 3 years before passing away. To most, this was a disaster. To Lu, it was just another iteration of the ascent. As the 13-year-old Yin Zhan took the throne, Lu officially activated the mentor mode. He stood behind the young king, holding the keys to the empire, unaware that the most uncontrollable variable in his algorithm was the very person he thought he could control forever. With the passing of King Zhongxiang, the power system of the Qin Empire entered a strange transition. The 13-year-old boy was on the throne, and behind him stood the merchant who once counted pennies in Handan. In this moment, Lü Buwei was more than a prime minister. He was the protector and the lead architect of the entire imperial machine. He launched a regent agorism, a shadow cabinet mode, attempting to reformat the national will while the king was still a minor. Lu knew that a system driven only by violence and slaughter would eventually collapse from internal friction. He began to apply a new management philosophy. He did not purge his enemies like a typical tyrant. He used merchant inclusivity to recruit scholars and thinkers from across the continent. He turned the capital into a massive political incubator, converting elite outsiders into the empire's think tank. This was a political risk hedge, using diverse ideas to buffer the cold, brittle structure of the Qin state. In Lu's logic, he sought sustainable growth. He reduced the waste, optimized the bureaucracy, and even preferred economic penetration over simple massacres in diplomacy. This management style caused the empire's power to explode within a few years. He ran the country like a multinational corporation. Every decision had an ROI, and every reward had a clear KPI. Under this cold efficiency, the court fell into a deathly silence, as every conflict was resolved by Lu's precise calculations. But this shadow cabinet had a fatal paradox. He was teaching the boy how to rule while simultaneously stripping him of the right to do so. Lü treated the future first emperor like a high-potential intern who needed constant supervision. He forgot that his boy carried the wolf-like genes of the Qin royalty, and a desperate, almost pathological need for control forged in the shadows of Handan. While Lü was busy perfecting the system in his office, the silent boy on the throne was watching him with icy eyes. In the boy's algorithm, Lü's brilliant decisions were just that, pre-calculated against his future power. 路上还有是密切的 system, unaware that he had become the very piece of redundant code that the system needed to delete. Under the lanterns of the Prime Minister's office, Lü Buwei realized that executive orders and money alone could not give an empire eternal life. The true architect must match the hardware with the top-level software system, a logic that could format the minds of the people. He gathered 3,000 scholars, from the harsh legalists to the kind-hearted followers of Confucius. He ordered them to break their barriers and melt the world's wisdom into one masterpiece. This book was the Spring and Autumn Annals of Master Lü. It was a product manual for the Qin Empire, a new solution to replace the old Bloodline Algorithm. In this work, Lü revealed his core philosophy: balance and inclusivity. He believed a machine built only for killing would burn itself out. Only through harmony could the empire transform from a war monster into a sustainable civilization. He advocated for soft management, suggesting that the king should be a symbol, while professional managers like himself handle the execution. He hung 1,000 pieces of gold at the city gate, claiming that anyone who could change a single word in the book would be rewarded. This was more than a marketing stunt. It was a signal. He wanted to use a transparent, contractual standard of thought to hedge against the unpredictable, violent will of a single ruler. This book was the peak of Lü's political dream. He wanted to turn Qin from a legalist battlefield into a super corporation of reason and equilibrium. He hoped the young king would grow into a modern ruler who understood compromise and cost accounting. But this logic contained a dangerous setting. If the king truly followed this path, he would become a figurehead, while the real power remained with the bureaucrats. This was a secret war for the ownership of the empire. 陆少他有过随兵的 state, but in the eyes of the growing king, this book was a mental cage designed to imprison his absolute will forever. While the citizens marveled at the gold at the gate, the young king opened the scrolls in the palace and did not see words. He saw Lü's hands trying to block out the sun. The fundamental conflict between absolute power and contractual rule made this 1,000-gold masterpiece a declaration of war. Lü thought he had the perfect answer. Unaware that he was touching the most forbidden zone in the world of absolute power. As the young king approached adulthood, the political balance in the palace began to crack. For Lü Buwei, this was the ultimate system rejection. He held on to his merchant's partnership mindset, believing the king should be the supreme symbol of the state, while the actual work was left to professional managers with logic and vision. To him, this was a low-coster, high-efficiency, win-win strategy. But in the king's mind, power was never a fair trade. It was absolute obedience. Growing up in the shadows of Handan had left the king with a deep instinct to never share control. Every piece of advice from Lü sounded like a hidden agenda to extend his regency forever. This fundamental mismatch turned their cooperation into a silent war for permissions. Lü tried to teach the emperor how to do business, how to manage people through interests and soft power. But in silence, the emperor was learning how to kill with precision and how to crush dissent with absolute violence. This mismatch peaked with the promotion of Lü's new book. Lü wanted a kingdom of laws and contracts. The king wanted a black box where he could wield his power without any boundaries. In every core debate, this conflict spread like a virus. The old-school bureaucrats began to side with young king, as the brutal logic of legalism perfectly matched his restless heart. Compared to that, Lü's rational merchant-style reform looked like a disguised attempt to steal the throne. Lü remained trapped in his role as a mentor, believing his position was secure as long as the empire's GDP kept growing. He forgot that the most dangerous moment in power is when you think you are irreplaceable. This system, conflict, pushed a mentor and a student to the edge. Lü held the capital and the administrative inertia of 20 years, while the king held the birthright of an unquestionable bloodline. When merchant reason tried to fix a royal madness, there was no win-win outcome. In the deep nights of his mansion, Lü might have felt the cold stare from the shadows, but his pride as a gambler made him double down. He did not retreat. He tried to stabilize the situation with a radical political move, unaware that this decision would be the biggest risk control disaster of his career. When a top-tier venture capitalist realizes his core asset, the adult king, is slipping out of his control, he reverts to what he knows best, risk hedging. Lü Buwei knew the Queen Mother's scandals in the palace were a political time bomb that could destroy his reputation as the king's protector. So he introduced Lao Ai. This was a classic merchant's mistake, trying to cover a massive scandal with a smaller trouble. He used a fake sexual symbol to fill a power vacuum, hoping to extract himself from the queen's private life. In Lü's algorithm, Lao Ai was just a disposable tool, a derivative to hedge against political risk. He gave Lao Ai a title, power, and even allowed him to build a parallel system in the palace, all to maintain the illusion of stability so Lü could keep running his corporation. But he completely underestimated the mutation speed of the power monster. Lao Ai, the patch meant to cover a flaw, quickly evolved into a virus trying to consume the host. He began calling himself the king's stepfather, building his own army, and even plotting to replace the royal bloodline with his own secret children. This risk hedged turned into a systemic disaster. When Lao Ai launched his rebellion, the power balance Lü had built for 20 years collapsed instantly. For the king, this was not just a revolt. It was the perfect excuse for a liquidation. The king's cold efficiency in crushing the rebellion proved he had already taken over the machinery of violence in secret. He was waiting for this moment, waiting for Lü to fall from grace because of this fatal decision. Lü, 怎么暗合 induced the rebel? 我是 no longer the protector. He was the source of the royal sheen. This was the greatest failure of Lü's career. He was used to calculating interests, but he forgot that emotion and madness in power could not be quantified. He tried to cover a bad debt with more bad debt, and the cost was the total bankruptcy of his contract with the king. As the rebels were executed and the Queen Mother was imprisoned, Lü's influence evaporated in the cold air of Xianyang. Standing in his magnificent mansion, Lü felt the chilling silence of a bankrupt man. All his chips were swept off the table by the very man he had put there. In 237 BC, the long political reign in the capital finally stopped, but for Lü Buwei, it was the start of the final winter. After the rebellion was crushed, the king did not execute his mentor in the main hall. Instead, he used a merchant's coldness to launch a total liquidation of Lu's political life. Lü was stripped of his titles, his power, and was exiled back to where he started, Luoyang. The puppet master who once ruled the continent was now like a bankrupt CEO, forced out of his own company, watching his 20-year management system being torn apart by the king's primitive logic of violence. In his exile, Lü still maintained a fake prosperity, with guests from all over the world visiting him. But this noise was not a shield, it was a target. The king in the capital was watching with a cold algorithm. In the king's might, as long as Lü Buwei lived, the virus of merchant-style reform would always be a threat. So, a short letter of only 30 words was delivered to Lu's hands. There was no anger in the letter, only 3 icy questions. What have you done for Qin to deserve such land? What is your relation to Qin to be called my mentor? This was the ultimate audit. You deny all of Lu's investment, erased his gamble in the streets of Hundan, and cut the last thread of connection between them. The king told Lü that in a system of absolute power, there are no partners, only followers or corpses. In that moment, Lü finally saw the true face of the machine. It does not accept fair trades, it only accepts total consumption. Lü looked at the letter, and the land he once thought he could measure with gold, and let out a laugh of self-mockery. He had calculated everything: the prince's future, the king's throne, the empire's map, but he failed to calculate the madness of absolute control. He was a brilliant architect who tried to run civilized software on a hardware of fear and blood. This mismatch meant his only remaining move was to settle his debts with his life. In 235 BC, the greatest venture capitalist of the empire drank poison and died. His death marked the total bankruptcy of merchant logic in the face of ancient power. Lü was gone, but the standardized algorithm of empire he left behind was taken by the king and turned into an iron curtain that would weigh on the soul of history for the next 2,000 years. The man who tried to buy the world left with nothing but a cup of poison, leaving behind a final lesson about the true nature of power.